Draft physics video using a different camera so I can stitch this stuff together. So I think I'll just do this video in parts. Response to Hythloday. Could Amendment be right? There's just so many arguments. Okay, the second half of the video is just rude and obnoxious. Playing word games, rationalizing his direct accusations, essentially, of hypocrisy and duplicity over the word vegetarian, in which there has been no hypocrisy or duplicity. I haven't used vegan or even vegetarian extensively I haven't used it in titles of my videos. I don't argue for it. I argue for it in the sense that I argue for the underlying necessity to prevent harm. If anything, my philosophy could be argued to be vegan plus. It's not less than vegan. It's not a duplicity or a dishonesty. I've never been dishonest or attempted to fool anyone. So again, these are his implications, his accusations that are quite direct of duplicity and dishonesty. And so he's just playing word games, because clearly I have contextualized my language. Anytime I make up a word, I describe it. I say, this is the word I would like to replace it with. Just as when I call myself, say I have a fair economics, and I talk about incentive economics. I don't say Stalin. I don't say I'm a Leninist. I don't say I'm a Marxist. I don't do any of that. And so it's just so dishonest of this fucking slandering liar to imply things like I have somehow been less than forthcoming or less than honest, or that I have used or manipulated language for some subversive purpose. My only purpose is because I won't label myself a commie, because I don't believe in the things the communists believe in. For fuck's sake. But I believe in many of the themes and the principles. And I've articulated what principles I like and what principles I don't like. Like I wouldn't let employees own the business. And I've explained why that's no better than having the crappy frickin' elitist king own it. Because then they become owners in their mentality. Then they become assholes looking for a gimmick, a way of getting another 2 weeks vacation. I've explained all this shit, and I've been very clear. I've made a deliberate effort to be complete in my definition of fucking words. I'm getting hostile just because the second half of this video was just so obnoxious. And then he says, well, why can't we just get along? Cringe-worthy. You're puke-worthy, you fuck.
Could crazy Amendment actually be right?
See, even starting videos with this nonsense. You say, well, why is our conversation so degraded? Well, this doesn't help, asshole. You can't complain about the level of the conversation and then engage in this kind of crap.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah, well, whatever. Obviously I could, in the sense we don't have any argument yet from anyone stating how this can't be true. Just as I haven't been able to make an argument yet that says Einstein can't be right. Can't. I'm arguing there's better theories. But the truth is, yeah, just as they don't have the nail in the coffin evidence of their theory, I don't have the arrow to the heart. I don't have the headshot to kill their theory.
A normal scientific paradigm, it would seem very, very unlikely.
Yes, whatever. The normal scientific paradigm. So that doesn't mean like people interested in evidence and having a fair trial. See, scientists used to be concerned with evidence and fair trials. They were cautious. Newton was very cautious in what he claimed to be true. He would talk about speculation, this, that, and the other thing, but what he wrote in the book wouldn't be that crap. Okay? And the same you could even say for Maxwell, who was a desperate kind of ether believer, but he didn't shove his ether into his equations.
But from my position,
I am going to speed this up. I mean, I know it's a little impolite, but he's just a little too slow.
his chances of being right are still very, very slim. But
yeah, so they're still very, very slim based on what? There's this. The idea is there's like a fence, and there's a head moving across it, and that's the challenge of this idea of science. What's moving the head? Is the head riding a bicycle? I mean, first there's the conclusion there's a head and the body is connected to it. But what mechanism is moving it? Is it riding on sea turtles? Is it a train, a back and forth thing turned into a circular motion, or is it a circular motion inside an engine? What's moving the head, right? And so there's lots of theories that can answer the question, but there's subtleties about how the head moves that might reveal the right answer. Like if it's a train mechanism, there would be a ch 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 in there. Yeah.
Significantly greater than the orthodox scientific paradigm.
All right, so significant greater than the crap that exists, just because the crap that exists has too many parts, and the parts are in conflict, so they have a problem. See, look, physics has gotten complicated since Newton's day. There's a lot of subjects in physics now, a lot of detail, and so now there's more details about how the head is moving, and so now there's more. If it was sea turtles, then it would be going this way and this way and this way and this way because of the way they swim, so it can't really be sea turtle, so there's all kinds of stuff like that. So yes, the imperfections of this, the conflict of quantum mechanics with bent space gives you an indication almost of like religion, in the sense that it gives you the idea, well, they all can't be right. Now the question is, are they all wrong?
Quantum mechanics and even classical insights. Why do I see a chance that he's right? Is because I'm in agreement on certain, let's say...
Yes, let's just say we agree that the established story or narrative of the head moving is thinly evidenced. The evidence isn't certain. It isn't we have conviction. Okay, we have enough evidence for conviction. We have evidence of indications and evidence of looks like, as Pirro, it seems like, but it's a long way from the kind of evidence you need where you can be exclusive and say, okay, like with evolution, we have enough evidence to say, well, if there was a God, he didn't create man and woman. That's for fucking sure. Evolution did that one.
But see, I think he plants his feet on firm ground. It's...
Oh, well, isn't that inconvenient? Well, anyway, I'll be back. Leave us continue and such. Hopefully, see if it plays. I don't know where I left off. I have no idea.
It's an insight. It's insightful of him to realise and reject the motion of fields.
In your opinion, right. Yeah, I replaced the idea of a untold mechanism to say, their description of fields are always things below the fence. No evidence, just speculation that, there must be something that's making things move. And I think it's a legitimate criticism, in the sense that the whole point of physics isn't to point out the obvious. The whole point is to do the logical deduction. So that's a part of this I wanted to get to. Is, I have presented my argument in defense of a theory of logic that analogizes the process to putting things on trial. And this even gets to this idea of the philosophy of science, because he's going to bring it up. This idea of what is philosophy. And my argument is that philosophy is a branch of science. It isn't the other way around. There isn't a philosophy of science. There's science, and one of the subcategories is philosophy. That means the conversation about what it means to be alive, human, an interactor in the universe. Those subjects are philosophy. The rest is science. And that the logical process, the scientific method, instead of just saying, well, the experimental method and stuff like that, I would change it in light of like the trial analogy, that it is evidence collection, deduction based on what the evidence shows, conclusions, theorizing. I think I used the words here. Let's see. So first you start with new facts, and you get those through evidence and experience. And then you draw new conclusions. So you combine the facts. You, I can't read my writing. I write smaller than I can read. It's not too smart. So your theory, conjecture, let's see, what the hell is that? It's a good word I added over there, but I can't. Logical addition. So that's the word I would use. Logical addition. So you do some logical addition on the new facts. So you add the new facts to the old facts, do logical addition, and that gives you a new conclusion. And then all you have to do is test the conclusion. So the conclusion would be, this man is guilty of the crime. You put the evidence together, show the logical addition, and now the only question is do we have enough evidence? Do we have verification, validation? Do we have proof? And beyond reasonable doubt, meaning, could it be something else? Is their door still open? And my argument is most of the things physics is talking about, they're talking about like it's proven. And it's not beyond contention. It's not beyond drawing another theory that works better. A completely different theory. Very few of their premises could be written on the stone, so to speak. Very few of them meet the standard of proof for conviction in terms of conclusive enough evidence and redundant sources of evidence. So I didn't say that perfectly, but you get the idea. That's my redefinition of what logic is. So yeah, I'll use the word logic, but that's what I'm saying it is. That's what I say when I use the word. That's what I intend to say when I use the word. I don't intend to say what you think the word means, and most of the times I will make sure in my conversation I don't assume you understand that definition, and that's why a lot of my videos are redundant, because I use more than one word to point out I'm talking about a trial. I'm talking about putting the argument on trial. I've done that. And for you to imply I haven't done it, and that I've used language sloppily in important circumstances. I'm not saying I've made plenty of verbal mistakes. I'm just saying when it's important, I am redundant, and I do provide plenty of context so I'm not misunderstood. And it's just bullshit for you to imply otherwise, I think. Absolute bullshit. Complete bullshit. Proof you're a bullshitter.
My opinion of mystical fields, wherein we have wave phenomena quite separate from every other example of wave phenomena we've ever encountered, known or modelled. Right.
So why do they? That's the whole problem, right? It's something different, and they call it a wave. So they use a word that really shouldn't be expanded to include all of this new stuff. So they should call it a wavy-ite, or they should call it a wahaha baba makapapa pa papia ba. Well, probably something with less syllables. I mean, I can't, I'll just come up with some kind of trite word, but I'm just saying they should use some other language to describe this corpuscle of wave, this confined wave.
The wave equation says what Inmendham says. Waves are made out of tension.
I'm glad you would concede that point now. I mean, I think I did make that argument adequately, and you seem to be disagreeing before, so thank you.
So, though I find many of Inmendham's ideas troubling, indeed contradictory to my mind, I don't think he's ever explained the contradictions that I've tried to point out that I see.
Yes, I have, and I've done so, it's just so, again, this is just so disingenuous, some of these critiques you make. They're just so dishonest. I mean, I'll go back to the website, okay, the forum in particular. So let's load that. Draft physics. And so I've done it on purpose. Overview videos on fields, the two slit, relativity, radioactivity, bent space. So I have separated these subjects and attempted to find contradictions and to find where something doesn't fit the model. And so I just find these critiques so overtly inappropriate, unfounded, irresponsible, reckless on your part even, sloppy, when the evidence of the opposite is so overwhelmingly present.
Whether he's not understood the criticism or not followed through.
I mean, what is there to understand about your criticism? You're just saying does not. Your criticism is that, hey, you're just contriving that perpendicular thing. Yeah, of course I am. In the sense I'm saying, this is how it functions, because that's the end result. And to sit there, and again, I pointed out how if you want an explanation, I can make one up. I'm just saying, why you want details that, yes, I could make up details. I could say two arrows that hit each other don't ever hit each other on point. So when they come at each other, they hit each other's slopes, and the two 45-degree angle slopes end up creating a 90-degree turn. There, I've explained the 90-degree turn. I made it up. Again, this stuff is all below a fence. I can only give you potential ways that it happens. And all I'm saying is there's nothing foundational in the existing evidence that says it can't be the way I described it. I didn't say I have conclusive proof this is how it functions. It's two arrows. I'm saying we know it turns 90 degrees.
But as a philosopher of science himself.
So I'm not a philosopher of science. So again, and I can say it over and over and over again, I don't wish those qualifications. I think they're backwards. So it's almost like saying, because I'm not a capitalist, I'm automatically a communist. And you're just going to keep saying, Inmendham as a communist. Well, no, I'm not a communist. I don't want these labels. I'm not a philosopher of science. I'm attempting merely to understand reality, and I'm attempting to do it fairly and coherently and intelligently and reasonably. Period.
That's the way I view it.
I'm attempting to participate in the trial of reality. Reality's on trial, so to speak. And we're showing up, and there aren't, there's some people making conclusions, and we have the evidence on the table, and we're saying what took place. Who's the victim? What weapons were used, and who's the potential perpetrators? We're walking in with no agenda. We're just saying there's all this evidence on the floor. Let's piece it together and find out what this trial is all about.
He has an entitlement even though from a non-philosophic, from a scientific perspective, the idea seems plucked out of thin air that that there's this notion of trapped quantons between electrons and in.
Okay, so he says it's pulled out of thin air. Now, I've done all these videos quite publicly. My whole conversation about physics in the last 5 years, quite public. I had lots of ideas trying to come up with the mechanisms, right? I was trying to accept the standard model and have the moving electrons. And I was trying to find out ways I could make that work and blah, blah, blah. And so this evolution of this theory has been quite open. And there was a point, once I magnetized the electron, once I put the electron as the static object, okay, it shudders, but it's static, then there was this opportunity to have this mechanism of, well, you know, and even related to string theory, you know, the whole idea, because yes, we have tension. We know that tension exists. We know there's a reason why electrons, when they have a charge, even static charges, why doesn't everything just fly around? Well, there has to be two charges. There has to be a compensator. There has to be two forces. And then that's what basically gave me the idea, you know, and then I started thinking about it and frequency of light and why does that matter? And then it gave me the thought that there's two real variables here. You know, how much of something there is, and then how fast it's vibrating. So it was based on people were making resonance arguments that came around with the Tesla stuff, resonance. Well, yeah, it happens that resonance is important because that's, again, related to frequency. So the higher the frequency, the more apparent force. And then you could argue the more of something, the more force. So the more ping pong balls, I can make more force. Higher frequency of bouncing, I can make more force, more impacts on things. It explains the function. And then it also explained where do the photons come from? Because I couldn't make them come out of electrons. Because I couldn't make an electron that could store the photon. So I said, where's the photon? And obviously, if it's not in the electron, it had to be outside the electron. So that's why I started thinking outside the electron. So again, to say it came from nothing is bullshit. It came from 5 years of context of thinking about this. Einstein said, when late in his life, 2 years before he died, after 50 years of studying photons, I have not aggrandized my understanding one iota. Something like that. Well, I could argue that after 5 years of studying, my understanding has grown exponentially. So yeah, I don't have the same opinion. I'm not just as clueless, shithead. But I mean, again, he's arguing that he wants this explanation of the reasoning, the entire reasoning that led me. And the reasoning that led me was a bunch of little pieces. But I can argue in defense of it because it matches the evidence. But there's no point in me giving you historically, well, when did I first trip over that fact? And when did I first bump into that one? And when did I rub against that one? And how did I get where I got? You know, I could spend 10 hours explaining how I got there.
Atomic structure bouncing about, and it's the trappedness that is whatever. It seems quite plucked out of air. I don't see where he developed that principle.
Well, I just point out how I developed it. So if you don't see it, then you haven't been watching the videos, in my opinion, because it's quite obvious in the history of these videos that it's there. And I drew pictures of it. I even had the model. Remember the model, the computer model I was making? And I explained how it's got problems. Well, that led to the fixing those problems is what led to this new understanding that the force is something outside. The electrons and the protons are being moved by the forces, where matter absorbs forces. Because the forces are between the electron and the protons. You get it? So you can't think of, even though they're called material particles, electrons and protons make matter. They aren't matter, so to speak. So matter can contain a whole bunch of this extra force. You can pump it in like a battery. But electrons and protons can't gain weight. They can't gain the force. They can't have a maintainable velocity.
Well, I would answer. This is an example. I mean, there's many principles that he's that are quite intuitive within Mendham's framework, but that particular one would be an example.
Well, again, I don't know how you can't see it as intuitive once I've explained it. So, I mean, intuitive in the sense of, oh yeah, well that would totally create this force balance thing, okay? So you could understand that when an electron moves, it's creating compression in the ping pong balls hitting it. You know, if you thought about it being between two walls and there's ping pong balls bouncing to each wall, you could understand that if I move it closer to one wall, the frequency of the bouncing goes up, and as it moves away from the other wall, it gets weaker. You could sort of understand that. So now there's more force on one side than there is the other. Now it's going to bounce back. It's going to be pushed. It has a want to go this way. So if it gets flicked by a force into one wall, it's going to go back and find the neutral again. That is supposing that the two forces in total number of ping pong balls is equal. But then if I poured more ping pong balls into one side, you can understand that'll change where the neutral point would be. Because the less frequency but more balls could equal more frequency and less balls. That equal sign could exist. I'm just saying, to say that seems not connected to the function, in my opinion, would be disingenuous of you, because I think you can understand that, no, that really does explain why electrons just don't go flying all over the place, that there has to be a balance of this force.
And probably one of many. So, you know, I have praise for Mendham, but I can't help criticize it.
And I wouldn't mind that, again, but your critiques just don't have... well, first, there's things like cringeworthy, which I don't need, and these stupid language, these stupid... You use things like arbitrary, or you use semantics. These fucking complaints about fucking verbiage are useless. Again, the only arguments that matter are arguments about the evidence on the floor. So if there's something I'm adding, I'm doing some logical addition and making a new conclusion. Your obligation is to point out where there's evidence on the floor that that's inconsistent with. To say I don't think it fits, or say Einstein didn't think so, doesn't mean anything. It's like saying Einstein liked bologna sandwiches. What does that have to do with whether he's right about relativity? Oh, that's right, nothing.
The theatre, with the aim of saying, look, spend some time thinking about this. This is just because if you could actually overcome these difficulties.
Right, and if that's all you did, we wouldn't have a problem. I would say thank you. Thank you for pointing out that problem. You did that a couple of times. A couple of times you just made reasonable arguments saying, look, you know, you have an input-output problem. You know, the universe won't do anything. You know, there was that kind of argument because I hadn't separated the force from the electrons and the protons, or something like that. I can't remember the exact thing, but it was helpful in me explaining better because now I understood why it could be why I could be misunderstood.
As you make the idea firmer, you become...
Yes, and that's all positive, but it ain't going to happen in this atmosphere of joke, kind of ridicule, dismissiveness, and being patronizing as fuck. It just doesn't work on me.
More entitled to claim it as a principle, I think. And that's a criticism as well, is that there should be videos titled Principle of. And so you don't, rather than making...
See, that's that, again, so he's saying that's another criticism, and I can't, I've linked, I've pointed, I can't stress enough. Each one of these subjects I have made a video on, I think, 90% of them anyway. Alright, so there's a video making my argument on these subjects. These are principles, polarization and magnetism, wave versus particle, electron spin. These are all subjects that are separate, that they can be defined as separate subjects within physics. And I've made arguments related to the principles involved. And so I don't accept this critique. I've made every effort now to, do the detail in those sections, and again, attempt to do the overview videos, which I think are more for the general population, so to speak. People less versed in the details. But to argue that I have not made an effort is just, again, it's insulting to sit there and tell somebody they didn't do it when they did it. It's really irritating. Anyway, alright, I'll be back and such. Alright, back again. Try some more. Might not.
Endless videos of re-explaining yourself.
Yeah, well, it just takes that, though. And again, if it wasn't, if this was something I'd already done, and I just studied it, and it's somebody else's, thing, then, then you can just do that. Well, I read the book, and this is what the book is about. But no, this is a work in progress, and so it, makes my task very difficult because, yeah, I've only spent 10 minutes thinking about certain subjects. 10 minutes, And apparently you have to get up to speed with all of them because somebody's going to bring up something that you only spent 10 minutes studying. And, that's a problem. But it wouldn't be a problem if, I guess, they were bringing, if the arguments had, if the critiques were sincere and they weren't just efforts to knock it down. They're trying to kick the thing over. They're trying to push it off. They're trying to break it. They're not testing it. They're trying to break it. I mean, when you're going to sit in a newly made chair for the first time, you don't just flop down into the chair. You test it gentle at first. Because, yeah, it might have a simple little flaw, like some little simple thing wasn't glued. You say, oh, just put some glue on that and it'll be ready. You don't break it, you test it. And these people aren't interested in testing.
You could say, the common objections are, the common objection of orthodox science is this, and this. I answer this with the principle of that. I answer this with the principle of this. I don't know the answer to this, but as a philosopher of science, it's okay. I'm not going to pull down the whole theory because I haven't got an answer to that yet. Yeah, it's seemingly...
Well, I think I've done all of this. So again, I don't like the philosophy of science rhetoric. I don't sign up to that. And again, part of what's on trial here, I've said these same words before, but I'll say it again. There's two sides to this. First, I have to argue that there's something wrong with the conclusions they all have that are written in their stone. And I'm saying, no, you shouldn't have done that. Let's put, whatever, marble glue back in and start over because you don't have conclusive proof. You didn't have a right to write that in stone. And I've pointed that out with the double slit experiment. And and the conclusion drawing is a habitual. I mean, they're addicted to it. and the short-sighted conclusion drawing. And so, and then they base their next conclusion on that fact that isn't a fact. See, the conclusions become facts, and they build more facts on top of that fact, or do more addition. And so it gets breaks everywhere going up. And then they cite experiments that are based on 4 premises I've already argued aren't really premises. That kind of thing happens. And it's difficult. Fuck.
Threatens in Mendham's philosophy, or my philosophy, speaking from his point of view as I just have been. But
well, again, like I said, the threat doesn't exist in the sense that I can still, look, there's lots of radio experiments dealing with lensing, and very few light experiments. So, so it gets complicated because you're saying, okay, look, they're not photon experiments in the strict sense. They are, but they aren't. But even more so, there's liabilities to radio. We already know it's the less there's less pixels, less resolution, and so that evidence has to be considered in that circumstance that way. You have to understand all the nuances of lower frequency photons and how they're affected in common experiments versus photons. It's like the 2-slit experiment. They'll talk about photons and then electrons, and the experimental results between those two things are not the same, and it's almost like they talk about it as if this is the same phenomenon, when we know that electrons don't even have an innate frequency. This is so to argue with the authority. Well, I mean, again, part of my argument here is I not only have to defend my theory, but I have to point out how their theory isn't as strong as they think it is, and I think I've done that. But I mean, you can just see it with all these little points where they have written in stone, electron, photon, same experiment. It's not the same experiment.
That's one of the criticisms that I often poke at in Mendham, because is a lack of, the word eludes me in a minute, respect for those who know particular things.
Well, again, I don't. Obviously, it's considered disrespect for somebody to even suggest the Pope is fallible and not chosen by God. I've already offended the Catholics, and so I'm just saying that how exactly, I think I've been respectful I mean, there's a point where you say they don't deserve the respect. I've been pretty respectful to Einstein. I think he was fundamentally wrong. But I mean, how much respect do I have to show physicists who are preaching hard and preaching with horrible evidence? I mean, there's a certain point where I don't have to respect somebody who's a propagandist, for fuck's sake. And they're certainly not willing to put themselves on trial. There's no evidence that they put their theories on trial. They'll accept an interview by a reporter who's, a quote out of their book and, be very, I mean, all this respect shit is the reason why physics is so broken, is because it's been shown too much respect. Too much, will you just tell us the fantasy and we'll believe it? Go ahead and tell us the next thing, the antiparticle. Nobody's going to study the actual evidence for this antiparticle, its existence, and how thin that evidence might be that there's any such thing as an antiparticle. There's a phenomenon. They've decided to call it the antiparticle. But is it really an antiparticle?
As a virtue, not respecting the establishment is, on the face of it, can seem very virtuous.
Yeah, and with the implication that somehow that's not what I'm doing, though. Thanks.
But when you need to learn things of the establishment first to help you in providing an alternative.
Well, again, I don't know if I need to learn from the establishment, in the sense that my fundamental argument is so much of what they're saying is wrong because it's premised on these wrong axioms. Their model of the atom is wrong. A lot of things I think are just their model of waving light is wrong, and it just permeates all of their teaching. And so what I'd rather do is see the experiments. That's why I liked Professor Lewin, because he did the frickin' experiments. And then you can see them, and then you can illustrate the phenomenon yourself. Now, regarding the math, that's a whole nother subject, because fundamentally it's a different discipline than physics. It's math. And so much of physics is used these mathematical models as if mathematical models are reality, which I would argue is not the truth. They're approximations of reality, and they're not very good ones. I mean, they're not as descriptive. They're explicit about some elements, some relationships. They figure out that a human is 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth, but they really don't give our face any character, so to speak. The math doesn't have any depth. It's the difference between a photograph and say a vector rendition of the same thing. A vector image, where vector, no. What's the word I'm looking for? The old images used to be used on computers because they used so much less, and they were just basically mathematical curves and mathematical straight lines, and I think they were vector. Well, I can't remember the word, but anyway, you probably know what I'm talking about. Anyway, they could make a nice Mickey Mouse, but they weren't too good at the tree in the wind.
There's a certain amount of humility, was the word I was thinking of. The overbearing ego. See,
well, again, you're going to keep complaining about some sort of overbearing ego. I mean, quite obviously, I'm challenging Einstein, for fuck's sake. I mean, to a certain point, obviously the challenge is going to sit there and draw these kinds of critiques, and how dare I? But I'm going to argue that my ambition in my videos, I don't sit around like Ken Wheeler and sit there and say, Einstein was an idiot. Einstein was an idiot. Tesla said so, and Tesla wasn't an idiot, but Einstein was an idiot. I don't spend videos doing that. So again, I don't, compared to the other truthers on physics, I am pretty fucking humble. Go make the comparisons. I'm pretty humble compared to them. And I'm pretty goddamn polite to the established scientists.
I view it this way, is that Inmendum has lived a very closed life.
Well, that's your fucking bullshit again. Irrelevant. I've been more places than you have, I think. Traveled more. And I've certainly had more various jobs than you've had, I bet. And, so fuck that. I had more than one set of encyclopedias as a kid. And I certainly had all my National Geographics. I got a whole bunch of them I got, 600 of them under the house up at the front I have to do something with. So I guess before I throw them out, I guess I'll make videos just flipping through them for the fun of it. Just one last respectful hat tipping.
Didn't go to university. And
yes, well, university ain't all it's cracked up to be. And nowadays, like again, I don't see how you miss anything of the university experience when you can access so much of it online, and so much of it done by freelancers who aren't part of some kind of silly tenurized institution, but actually have a passion for their subject.
Because of his anxiety problem, hasn't had much of a worldly life in a career.
Well, again, you can say that, but in the time I did have a life, I worldlied a lot. And, I was playing with lasers when solid state lasers when they were first invented. I was playing with integrated circuits the 4 days after they were invented. So, fuck you again.
So, he's never met people with whom respect is demanded.
I met people who did work, okay, who weren't just talking heads. So again, who have I shown disrespect to that isn't just a talking head? And what, I'm supposed to respect these commenters who put up no credentials whatsoever? And again, I didn't diss you first, you dissed me, from my perspective. You carried a pettiness from the other philosophical arguments into this argument. And I think that's, I can prove that case, in my opinion. And so any lack of respect just has to do with the fact that you have to give a little bit here. I'm not going to accept the role of submissive. All right? I don't have any desire to be whipping you with my truth, but I have no desire to be whipped by yours.
Not that they demand it, that an intelligent person who wants to have knowledge of, like I've met, my first...
So again, who wants to have knowledge. My whole argument here is that the institutions of knowledge are fundamentally corrupt and broken, and that I had to go out and redo knowledge. That was the whole mission, because what they were teaching was idiotic. They're silly, the photon splits in half nonsense.
Scottish supervisor, I knew he had a lot. He wanted to teach, I wanted to learn. In many ways, I probably, like I've said in the past, I wouldn't get on with him now. Well, if we hadn't had that early friendship, I would. But if I was to meet him now, I think he was very authoritarian and this, that, and the other.
So again, you're not really getting the point here. When I want to go learn, I don't make videos while I'm learning. I make videos when I have some facts, some conclusions to have tested. All right? I'm not in the learning period then. I'm in the let's test period. It's a different function. I know how to acquire knowledge if I need it. So again, I'm not here to be educated by you. I'm here to be fairly challenged by a better argument, if you have it.
But anyway, in the mine, we went on managerial courses, and I met, we used to do these team building exercises, and we'd then have classroom sessions, and we'd have, taught things to us, and then we'd have like emotional discussions and stuff, and they were like a team of psychologists who ran this, and they demanded respect. I've been to university twice studying.
Well, again, I'm not doing that. It's not, like I said, I don't, your perception that I need to be educated by these institutions is fundamentally, like I said, I think that whole argument, I've made arguments about the whole institution of education and how I wouldn't even have such a thing called a teacher. I would just provide information and pay and reward students for acquiring it. Again, who am I supposed to be showing respect to? Who is educating me that I must respect?
Electrical engineering and mathematics, and you recognise and respect the guy who can do the maths, who can provide an explanation of this, that, and the other, and who has wrote books and stuff.
And again, when that's appropriate, that's fine. When it's part of relevant to the argument. But again, we'll go back to this thing. They keep saying they have this math that predicts everything. Well, as I'm pointing out, the math doesn't predict the pattern in the two-slit experiment. And if they have math that actually creates the right answer, it only creates the right answer because they engineered the math to do it. It didn't predict anything. Their wave theory doesn't have any means to create the actual two-slit pattern. It doesn't have a method, it doesn't have a function, doesn't have a mechanism. And so if I would have let them teach me, then I would think that was all, oh no, it's perfect. Everything's fine. There's nothing to see here. The math is perfect. Yeah. Not even close.
And like I said, they don't always have to carry. I worked as an apprentice, and you soon learn, the.
Well, again, I don't want to beat the thing to death, but again, you keep saying that there's something wrong with my method, but the point is I've been right. And I kept pursuing this stupid relativity argument. And now I finally got it down to a circumstance where I'm hearing nothing back. Okay, I have an answer to that. I have the solution. I have blah blah blah. Well, they don't have it. So when you compare the wrench and the photon, and say, well, why does the wrench follow the mathematics? How does the photon cheat? How does the photon get around it? They don't have an answer.
The craftsmen who, let's say, are not very good and are stealing a living, as it used to be said, and those who really had something extra. And I would want to work with them and learn from them. In actual fact, the others very often refused to work with me because I'd asked all these questions and they couldn't answer, and it was embarrassing for them. So I worked with supervisors, because supervisors, they was keen, and they liked my keenness. They had achieved, because of their ability and keenness, had risen slightly through the ranks.
Right, well, this is all your narrative. It doesn't have to be my narrative. It doesn't have to be my experience. And your experience is not some sort of king's experience. It's not the. Why is this relevant? Again, I'm not saying I've done everything perfect and I didn't overreact to some people and that I haven't been reactive. I'm just saying this attitude that I'm fundamentally the villain and you're all fundamentally innocent is bullshit.
And they commanded a certain amount of respect. They commanded respect from me. So, but in Mendham, in his trap world, is the time.
Again, just bring up irrelevancies. Play this silly game. You want me to prove that my experience has probably been aggrandized by my trappedness? It's probably made me more capable of doing stuff like this because I haven't been distracted by the noise of culture.
To give that respect, to learn more, and you don't even have to, in this YouTube world, you don't have to have the respect or even give the respect in like the normal way, but you have to pay attention at the right times. If your ego is just flipping out on not liking the character of the man, you're losing the opportunity to learn and develop.
Well, again, that's not what I'm after, so I really don't have any interest in that shit, okay? I have no interest in your patronizing, idiotic notion that this process has something to do with learning. It has to do with a trial, and I'm making an argument in defense of a conclusion.
One thing, I don't think I've ever, because I wouldn't say it, like I say, it might have happened in an emotional moment, but I don't think it, that Mendham is unintelligent. I never call him stupid. He once said he was assessed for and had an high IQ.
And again, all this stuff doesn't matter. The fact that I have knowledge of stuff is just incontrovertible. It's not something you can argue. I can go demonstrate my mechanical knowledge of physical things in the world.
I believe that, but it's unfortunate that he can't make the most of that high.
Well, it's you say, again, this because I'm not doing it the way you think it needs to be done. Well, I don't think I'm the one making the errors. And again, time will tell and all that kind of crap. But I just really I don't think it's in my own interest to sit there and give respect to trolls. To people who give no respect. So, I'm just not going to play that.
You can consider intelligence and IQ as a measure of the potential in the brain, and then you can consider...
Yeah, well, the only relevance this would have is, like I said, when I was a kid, they thought I was retarded. Okay, they thought I was an educable, slow learner thingy. And then when they gave me IQ tests that didn't depend on language skills, modeling tests, yeah, I demonstrated that no, I was actually exceptional, not slow. So they didn't keep me back, even though I was the youngest kid in the class and all straight F's all through grammar school, blah, 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 because they said, well, his brain must work. It just hasn't, it's just not doing the socialization thing yet. But once it learns how to read and write, it'll be okay. Something like that.
Knowledge and the other word I was thinking of earlier, just being smart as having acquired a certain amount of knowledge. And the two don't, somebody can be really smart but have no significantly impaired intelligence. But the intelligent person really...
Well, it's really about finding flaws, right? So this is, it's like those are some of the tests that I was really good at, is like, find the thing that's wrong in this image. They'd give you an image and there was like 10 things that were wrong, like trees growing upside down or some kind of stupid thing. And I was really good at finding the things that didn't fit.
Wants to be smart as well, because that's part of the thing. He becomes infinitely more powerful if he acquires the knowledge as well. And Emendum resists too firmly at times.
Well, again, your statement that I resist is, I think, just wrong. And it would be very convenient for me to be better at calculus. I mean, better, that is, have some skill. Understanding derivatives and, stuff with hats on it and all of this crap. That would be some advantage if I better understood that math. But I do understand it conceptually, what it's attempting to reduce. So, but should I waste 2 years trying to become a mathematician? I don't think so.
So yeah, I mean, in 1,000 years, the whole scientific paradigm could be overturned, and we'll have...
Yeah, well, I think it's going to take a lot less than that. I think it's going to take about any day now. Any day now. I'm always thinking about different things, different angles. So I was thinking of, writing to a couple of colleges, especially in New Jersey, some good ones here, Princeton and stuff, and just see if they want to claim me. Like, here, you have a chance to claim me now, like you own me. You can claim me now, or are you going to let them do it, the other guy get me? Yeah. That kind of thing.
Supercomputers who will understand every word we've said and give testimony to here on YouTube.
Well, again, the supercomputer's never going to be able to do the thing of tasting consciousness, and until it tastes pain, it's going to be the dumbest thing on earth. I don't care how smart it is, it's going to be stupid as fuck. You can't know anything about anything until you feel.
YouTube, and when you ask the question, Google of the future, who first had the idea of trapped particles in between things, buzzing about, blah blah blah? They'll say, this crazy guy in Random, if that's the current scientific paradigm.
Yes, it will be funny. I wish I could be there to enjoy it, but yeah, that's the tragedy of this life thing, that I'm not even going to get to, it's like Van Gogh. He didn't know he did better than he thought, I'm not going to know. And that's going to suck. It sucks now. This part sucks. And, it'd be really nice if I know I get to the island of, whatever misfit toys, and I save all the misfit toys and everything works out great. But I don't know now. And so that's the part that sucks.
Like I said, many of his notions have deep problems with it. Otherwise, somebody else would have. And it's like sometimes you don't want to break the stallion sometimes, because maybe it's those qualities that allow him to dig his heels so deeply and come up with these. It's a complicated affair. But let's say it could be managed better.
Yeah, well, I'm not disagreeing with that, but again, all I've heard through the last 2 years is this bullshit. Like your commenter, for example, the fucking ass wipes like Skyzer who wants to nuke all the Arabs, that Einstein. Um, Great stuff like, look, you cuck. Yeah, like, we need this crap. Leave Gary alone, okay? He's just thinking outside the box. LOL. XD. Huh. Brilliant. I mean, what's... That's the context. All right? These are these bottom feeders that you're defending.
Who could deny that? We can all do better.
And again, so he says this, and then this video goes down the toilet. So he says, we could all do better. And then what's he going to do right now? I mean, probably have to end this video here, so I'll finish this later. Maybe I won't even bother playing the second half because it's just this awful, He starts doing the cringeworthy stuff. So he says, we could do better. And then he starts talking about, well, cringeworthy. I mean, Minim's cringeworthy when he does this or does that. Because I don't think there's something fundamentally brilliant with his comparison of the duality problem of particle versus continuous. But anyway, yeah, cringeworthy. Yeah, fuck you. I don't put that in the category of doing better. But anyway, enough of this. And I want to do a two-slit video because I had some observations. And so many things. So many things to do. Anyway, till next time and such. I might add on, but I don't think so.